Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey Jason, John Pauline, bringing you some action. John, first things first, we got to talk about probably the greatest Maddux ever thrown, because that's been at the forefront of my mind all day. Now, a Maddux, for anybody who doesn't know, is a complete game thrown in under 100 pitches, named after Greg Maddux, because of how efficient he was. Tarik Skubal of the Tigers, reigning Cy Young Award winner, he threw a Maddux in a 5-0 win over the Guardians, right? 94 pitches for the complete game shutout, 13 strikeouts, the most strikeouts ever in a Maddux.
That's crazy. I mean, when you think about it, especially because if you're getting that many strikeouts, that means you're throwing a lot of pitches, at least 3 pitches in a bat.
That's 39. That's
Yeah.
at least 39 pitches.
Yeah.
For those 13 strikeouts, right? 94 total pitches. That's 55 pitches to get every other out. That's 14 other outs on 55 pitches. That's an average of 3.9 pitches per at bat if the other strikeouts were all 1, 2, 3 pitches.
It's crazy. And I always feel like Skubal doesn't get talked about a lot, even though he won Cy Young last year. I feel like he just gets overshadowed by pitchers like Skeens and even Ohtani and all these other pitchers. I feel like he kind of goes under the radar and stuff. Even though I think he has a very good shot at winning the Cy Young again this year.
I'm a little biased. I think Max Fried should win it right now.
I mean, but you see, people talk about more Max Fried than they do. Like, I feel like I hear more about him, see stuff about him and scenes and all that, and don't hear about, Skubal as much. Like, I just feel like he kind of gets forgotten about, and he's so good.
You got Skubal, Crochet, Fried, Rodon, the 4 best pitchers in the American League, all southpaws.
It's not unusual. I mean, I feel like lefties always.
I mean, just to have 4 of the best pitchers in one league being a lefty, not having like one righty being in there. Like, think about it. Name a righty in the American League that's even it's even close to as good as those 4.
Can't think of one off the top of my head.
That's because there isn't one. That's why you can't, because it's just not. There's not one that exists in the American League. There's not a righty pitcher that's as good, that's playing right now, as those 4 guys I mentioned. But we'll see. The National League does have theirs. The Phillies do have Wheeler, who's still really, really good. Ohtani come back. Skeens is a young, the young guy, the stud out there. The American League, they do have Eovaldi, DeGrom, but that's still not the same level as what those 4 lefties have been doing.
I mean, maybe like DeGrom and Eovaldi like a couple years ago. Or DeGrom, when he was healthy back, maybe, but I don't think now.
I mean, he's still playing well now. It's just
they're just not what they once were.
Right.
They're still great pitchers, still good pitchers. They're just not I would say on the level they were, in prior years.
Of course, they're older.
But that happens.
But even with how well they're pitching, it's just not as dominant as those lefties have been. And they're all relatively young. I think Rodon's probably the oldest. But they're all, early, 31, 32 and younger. If I had to take a guess, Carlos Rodon is the oldest, and he is, I don't know, 34? He's 32. He's 32 years old, and he would be the oldest out of those guys we named. Obviously, Skubal and Crochet on their rookie deals. I mean, Crochet traded to the Red Sox with that extension, but, old enough to still be on his rookie deal. Fried just signed his first free agency contract. Rodon's now in his 3rd season. So those are a couple really great arms, and, They still have some time left in the tank, too. Next up, though, I do want to talk about a record that was set. O'Neal Cruz, Pirate superstar, he hit a record 222.9 mile an hour ball. Now, that's the hardest recorded ball hit and hardest recorded ball hit for a hit and hardest recorded ball hit for a home run. Now, he broke his own record for a hardest hit ball. That used to be 122.4. And he broke a 7-year-old record for hardest hit home run. Giancarlo Stanton hit a ball 121.7 miles an hour 7 years ago against the Rangers for a home run. That stood for so long, and now O'Neal Cruz broke that. With Stanton coming back in a few weeks, I wonder if those elbows will even let him hit a ball that hard ever again. He's going to get back that crown.
I don't think he's going to get that crown back. But honestly, I feel like if you asked like anybody who you thought would break that record, I feel like no one would say Cruz, like O'Neal Cruz would be breaking it.
I feel like there's 4 guys I can think of that are baseball players that are just in that conversation of constantly hitting the ball hard. Who do you think of?
If I had to pick, my first one that comes to mind is De La Cruz. I feel like he hits the ball really hard. I feel like Ohtani does hit the ball really hard too.
Those are 2 of the guys I was thinking of.
Like I just want to say Judge just because I want to say Judge too because he hits a lot of home runs, hits the ball really hard.
So I was thinking, and this is not counting O'Neal Cruz because we've been talking about him.
Mm.
It would be O'Neal Cruz, Giancarlo Stanton, Judge, Ellie, and Ohtani. Nobody else seems to hit the ball that hard as consistently as these guys. And it's just, incredible to see. And it's so difficult to do. And to set records, no matter what you do, is an incredible feat.
It is, and I wonder if like some of these balls like hit. Like I wonder because like how long have they been keeping track of like
2015?
The exit, like the velocities? So it's like
2015.
Do you think there were harder hit balls?
No, I do not.
You don't think like Barry Bonds was?
I think the technology is too advanced now, and these guys and their training is so different than even 15 years ago that the balls have just been hit harder. Think about the way pitchers have been thrown. Pitchers are thrown harder now. Even going back to that Skubal Maddux that we were just talking about, right? He threw the fastest pitch by a Tiger in the StatCast era at 102.6. He also threw the fastest pitch, a strikeout pitch by a starter since 2008 in that pitch. And that was in the 9th inning, 102.6. So it's just one of those things where the balls have gotten thrown faster. I remember being a kid. It was the 2012 playoffs between the Yankees and the Tigers. And the Tigers bullpen, I remember, the announcers talking about, wow, they have like 2 or 3 guys that can throw like 96, 97, 98 miles an hour. And they were talking about how, like that's so fast and how can these guys touch it? You didn't really even think of 100 miles an hour until like Aroldis Chapman burst on the scene. And that was consistency. Obviously, guys had touched it here and there, but it was never something thrown with, consistency, other than the rare person out there. But now you have guys, if you don't throw upper 90s touching 3 digits, people kind of look down on you as a starter. You have, or even a reliever, you need to be able to hit mid to upper 90s very consistently. And a lot of guys can touch triple digits now that they just never did before. So do you think this record by O'Neal Cruz is going to get broken anytime soon?
I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon, considering that it took this long to, to break the previous record.
Well, I mean, his record was the other one for the hardest hit ball.
Yeah.
So let's just not even say home run, just hardest hit.
Hardest hit ball?
Hardest hit.
Oh.
Is it
I
broken
mean,
anytime
see it.
soon?
I can
Who
see it
breaks it? You
being.
got to take a guess.
I can see it being broken in maybe like the next like year or so. And if I had to guess, I'd put it. I'd say De La Cruz.
I'm going to say Stanton wins it back.
I think that is very wishful thinking on your
He
part.
will sacrifice his elbows to the baseball gods to allow him to hit one ball 123 miles an hour for a home run.
Then just retire after that.
His arms will fly off with the baseball into the stands. He's going to do everything, put everything he has in it, and then retire if that has to be the case.
This sounds like a movie in the making. Like a.
It's like a opposite of Rookie of the Year. But let's talk some more about guys that can hit the ball pretty hard. That's Shohei Ohtani. He's one of those guys that we mentioned that could possibly even break that record. He's also the guy that now leads Major League Baseball in home runs. The first player to 20 home runs on the season. And he's now throwing bullpens. He's going to return to pitching sooner than later. It's pretty interesting stuff for the defending world champions.
I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that he was the first one to hit 20, considering that he kind of had a slow start to the season a little bit.
Yeah.
And
he's had
then
a home run in 3 straight games, twice now this year, 2 separate stints.
but it's like I thought for like because I mean you look at the start of the season, you almost think like they maybe figured him out a little bit, or that he
Yeah, but he's still a
you're
professional
just
hitter. He's still one of the
yeah.
best.
I think it's just that little hangover from the World Series. You got to get to get going again. You see a lot of teams have like a lot of
Right.
teams and players have that when they go like deep into the playoffs. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get back into the swing of things. Like next season.
Of course.
But I am excited to see him pitch, though.
I am too, because that'll remind people that he's not an ace pitcher.
What if he actually is? What if he comes back and he's like even better than he was before?
Then I'll believe in conspiracy theories that he got replaced and this isn't actually Ohtani. This is like a cyborg, because he's not an ace pitcher. He's, a back end 2, a high end 3, and a good rotation.
But he does get strikeouts. Like he does.
He
He
does.
does throw a lot of double-digit strikeout games.
Like, again, the team I follow most is obviously the Yankees, and I've seen him pitch against the Yankees, and he's never pitched well against them. They always hit him so hard that it seems like it's almost like a position player pitching when he's on the mound against them. Now, I know he plays, really well against bad teams, but he's had one good season as a pitcher. Outside of that, it's been nothing, to write home about. Good, but not great. And I think, as he focuses more on pitching, he's going to get some of that hitting taken away from him. He's going to stop focusing as much. He's definitely not going to steal as much, because he's going to have to be worrying more about his health. Doesn't want to get that arm banged up as much, stealing bags and reaching out and diving head first. There's going to be some considerations he has to have just to protect his longevity.
I mean, that's true. But do you think he's worth more doing pitching and hitting, or if he's worth more just doing one or the other?
My biggest thing with Ohtani, I think he's worth more pitching and hitting. I just don't think starting is where he's worth the most. I think using him as a bullpen arm is what is really the best, because he can give you 2 innings. He could be an elite closer on a great ball club, and it allows you to deepen your bullpen as well, where you have an extra arm available there that you don't have to worry about somebody going 5 innings, 6 innings, all the tax on his arm. He'll be able to pitch longer, in his career, I think.
I think he eventually goes to the bullpen at some point in his career. Like I feel like that's an inevitable move at some point. I don't know if they're gonna want to do it now, because I feel like
They won't
the
do it. They won't,
Dodgers.
but I think I think him as a closer always made a lot of sense to me.
I think it's going to happen, but I think the Dodgers want to get use out of him as a starting pitcher because that's like what they signed him
Of
for.
course.
So I think they want to at least do that first before they decide to move him to the bullpen or somewhere else.
So going on a little bit towards discussing some of our favorite teams. The Phillies, since we last spoke, are 7-1. Pretty good week for them. They swept the Rockies 4-0. 2-1 versus the A's, 1-0 versus the Braves at the time of recording. I believe they were rained out today.
They were rained out.
35-19 on the year. They're up 2 in the division. Pretty good there in Philly, huh?
I'm very happy with what they're doing right now. I mean, you have a lot of pitchers stepping up. Um, people swinging the bats again. I mean, it was a little worrisome the other day when Harper got hit in the elbow by Strider. I mean, I think the X-rays came back negative, but like you don't like
Yes,
seeing
they
that.
did.
I feel like I'm going a little rant here,
Go
but I
for it.
feel like every single season someone on the Phillies gets hit with a pitch on the inside because I feel like you have people getting like players getting their hands broken, getting just hit in the arms, hit on the hands, and getting hurt all the time. And the Phillies pitchers never throw on the inside to at all. I don't think they throw inside at all, high at all, and sit there and it's just like I think at some point you got to start throwing inside back at them. I'm
Of
not saying with
course.
the
That's
intention
one of
to hit
those
them.
unwritten rules of baseball.
Yeah, I'm not saying with the intention to hit them, but you got to you got to throw like up and into and on the inside too, because you can't just sit here and have your players get you know thrown on the inside and get like broken hands and hurt
Right. I
instead,
feel like
especially when it's your star player.
who suffered a lot from that in the past.
Yeah. So it's just something, and it just seems like it happens every single year. And then MLB sits there and is just like, if you throw back, we're gonna like. It's like they give warnings out before you can even do anything.
That's when you put out, some scrub reliever and just start throwing.
I'm not,
Take
yeah,
sections.
I'm not saying you want to hurt anyone, but it's like you gotta like send a little bit of a message to like don't throw inside, against our superstars.
I
And if
mean,
you are,
also,
you better be really good at locating the pitch.
I was gonna say, but if that's your weak spot, maybe work on hitting those inside pitches, getting out of the way, make it where that's not your weak spot.
I feel like that's kind of hard to do, Corey, especially with how fast they're throwing these balls. And if it gets
No, but
away,
if
it
they're,
runs
they're
in on
throwing
you.
inside they're throwing inside for a reason. And if they know you're going to chase, or if they know that's where you're more likely to not be able to hit the ball as well, that's what you need to work on. Make them throw more outside, make them move it away because you'll punish them if they make a mistake inside.
It's true. I just think the Phillies pitchers got to start throwing inside more. That's my biggest thing.
A
Just
little
because I
team, you
think
think?
just a little bit.
What team has been the biggest culprit for that?
I don't know because I feel like the one year it was like the Padres. It just seems like a lot of these people you just throw inside. I don't know if it's just one. It just seems like it happens almost every single year. Someone on the Phillies gets hurt from someone throwing inside.
Right. So now kind of going towards the Mets, who are now 2 games behind Philly. The Mets are 5-4 since our last episode. If I remember correctly, looking back at my notes, the Phillies were a half game back of the Mets our last episode, and now they're 2 up. The Mets went 1-2 versus Boston. They then took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. They took 2 out of 3 from the White Sox. They're 34-22. But Soto's still struggling. If we look at his stats right now, on the season, he's hitting 228. He's got 1.5 WAR, 34 runs scored for him, so 25 runs batted in. His OPS is 756. Now, the reason why that's significant, that's his OPS. Actually, updated a little bit more. His OPS, I think, is 745 right now. and Aaron Judge's slugging is 746. Juan Soto's slugging is 393. Aaron Judge's batting average is 395. So I know we talk about Soto a lot, but there just has to be something off with him, right? I know Ben isn't here to really defend his guy, and we've talked a lot about Juan Soto, but he just still doesn't seem happy. Just comparing what he was last year to this year, he signed through 2039. He's a free agent in the year 2040. That's not a real year. I don't care what you tell me. That's not a real year that's going to happen. That's so far out in the future. Like, I'll be in my 40s when he's a free agent. I'm not anywhere near my 40s. So the Met fans and Soto are going to have to figure it out and get along.
You hear, like, there's reports coming out and stuff about him. Like, I think it said, like, I think there was a report saying that, his agent said there was some regrets with him, like, I think leaving the Yankees.
Right.
And there were reports coming out that Soto wanted to stay with the Yankees and sign there, but his family wanted him to sign with the Mets. So, like, I feel like you're lying to yourself if he just doesn't look off, like he just doesn't look comfortable, with the
You're right.
Mets.
And
Because
but somebody
he's not like hustling, doesn't seem enthusiastic, like there's no Soto
right.
shuffle, like he just doesn't seem into it.
But somebody who's been a big reason for the Mets' success has been Kodai Senga. He's been incredible this year. He's 5-3, but we all know that wins and losses as a pitcher isn't really, important because
Yeah.
that's also an offensive stat. Is your team giving you run support? He's got a 1.46 ERA in his 10 games, 55 innings in 2/3 innings pitched, 52 strikeouts, almost 1K per nine. He's having a career year and he's staying healthy, knock on wood, that it's really been beneficial to the Mets. Pete Alonso still playing well. Francisco Lindor is going to make his first All-Star team as a Met. The bullpen has been fine. I think the Mets are going to be fine. They're just hitting a bit of a skid right now. And there's no
And that
doubt,
was going to happen.
but there's no doubt in my mind that the Mets and the Phillies are going to be fighting for first place for the next few months. They're going to be jockeying back and forth. The Phillies will hit a skid. The Mets will hit a skid. The Phillies will regain footing. The Mets will regain footing. It'll be fine. Soto will be fine. But right now, at least in the New York area, it seems like the sky's falling for the Met fans.
I don't know. I'm more inclined to say that the Mets are eventually just going to fall off and end up fighting for a wild card spot, and it's going to be the Braves who are going to end up clawing their way back up into second there.
That's how Ben prefers it. He wants them to underestimate
That wild card spot has done
damage.
pretty well in the past. I think the Phillies have done damage from there. A lot of teams have done
Diamondbacks,
damage. Diamondbacks
the
and have
Mets
gone
last year.
very far. Yeah. So
But
that's
then,
almost a coveted spot. But I think the Mets, like I said, I think at some point, because I think their pitching is still pitching way above what it actually is. And granted, Soto will probably should start hitting better, I guess, for Mets fans. Because I'm fine with him not hitting great all season
right.
long and actually getting worse. But if you're a Mets fan, you're hoping he gets better. And Lindor will probably stay and hit as well as he has for the rest of the season. And I would think Alonso too. But like they need some other guys besides them to step up and like start
And
putting work
they need
into.
Vientos and Nimmo and even guys like McNeil. They need Alvarez to develop.
I
But
think they were relying very heavily on Vientos doing what he did last season, this season.
right.
And I think that was like one of the things they were really relying heavily on. And I almost think at some point, I think the Mets were almost considering saying, screw it, we're not going to sign Alonso again, and Vientos is our guy.
They
I
were very
almost
close
think
to
that's
that.
I think that was the plan.
They were very close to doing that, and they'd be much worse off.
Yeah.
But now, kind of going towards the Yankees, who, like the Phillies, are 7-1 in the last week since we spoke. They swept the Rangers 3-0. 2-1 versus Colorado, not quite as good as the Phils. Then they're 2-0 versus the Angels, currently up 1-0 in the fourth versus them. They're 34-20 on the season. They're up 7 in their division. The last time the Yankees were up this much this late in the season, or at least before June, I should say, was 1998. They hadn't had a lead this big since 2022. And we're still in May. The Red Sox, Rays, and Blue Jays are all teetering within, you know, a couple games of 500. Nobody's more than 4 games over. The Orioles have completely fallen off the face of the earth. John, you picked the wrong horse to get behind.
I just, look, they're going to be good at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but they're going to be good.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So are the
Yeah,
Giants,
yeah.
Jets. They're going to be real good.
No.
I mean, the Orioles, they didn't have pitching.
It's growing pains. It's growing pains because they
Not
didn't
growing
go
pains.
after
They have no
pitching.
pitching. They don't have pitching in the minors. They don't have pitching in the majors. They got rid of one of the best managers in all of baseball because the GM decided to not invest in pitching and went to go
Isn't it funny
scapegoat.
how they fire the managers and like coaches in a lot of sports for just basically the GM being bad at his job
Yeah,
and
but
they
that's
just
exactly what
scapegoat
it
at the
is.
coach?
That's exactly what it is. But with the Yankees, their pitching has been great the last month. Carlos Rodon, like I was mentioning earlier, is pitching incredible. Max Fried should be the front runner for the Cy Young. Will Warren has been great. Clark Schmidt, still coming back from that injury, has been great. Ryan Yarborough, out of nowhere, has been pretty lights out. All their pitching's been effective. Luke Weaver is still the best closer in baseball right now. Fernando Cruz was pitching well until he got hurt, but he should be back soon. Mark Leiter Jr. has been a great arm. Devin Williams, when he's not closing out games, he's really regained his ability to work and pitch well. He's going to be a one and done as a Yankee, but he's somebody that's done really well. Anthony Volpe's been playing well. Paul Goldschmidt's having a resurgence. He was one of those guys that when the Yankees signed him, you thought, is this going to be like Rizzo? Is he going to be a washed up shell of himself? And the Yankees are going to, have to try to trade for somebody at the deadline, or they're going to trot out, the carcass of Paul Goldschmidt every day. But no, he's been our second best hitter. Cody Bellinger's turned it on. He's been really incredible the last month. I think he's hitting 373 in the month of May. He's playing really, really well. Trent Grisham's cooled off, but he's still playing at a high level. Same with Ben Rice, whose underlying stats make him the unluckiest hitter in baseball, hitting the ball really hard, just right at people. Jason Dominguez has really turned it on. There's been a lot of guys that have been really, really good players for the Yankees. And, they're playing a tough schedule still. They're in the middle of a 9-game road trip. And John, you know how you love those West Coast trips, right? As an East Coast team fan,
Hate them.
This is the Yankees' second West Coast trip this month. But luckily, they don't now. After they play the Dodgers this weekend, after that series against the Dodgers in LA, the furthest west they go is one series in Texas versus the Rangers in August. They play pretty much everything else on the East Coast starting from now. They're
I feel
starting
like that
next week.
works out in their favor because you want those
Right, you want those the less travel.
like later on in the season.
Right, you don't want to have to go on a West Coast trip at the end of August when you're exhausted. That's right. That's not beneficial to the team coming west. It's a lot harder to go from east to west than west to east. So the Yankees being done with their West Coast trip this early is going to be really beneficial for them. But now they play, the Angels right now, who are on a bit of a hot streak before the Yankees got there. They play the Dodgers, who's the World Series matchup. And then they go right after the Dodgers and play the Guardians, who were the ALCS matchup for the Yankees. So it's pretty tough schedule. They did play the Rockies. Didn't play as well as they should have. But they still took 2 out of 3. And then,
They
that's
lost
really all you.
the first game, which was Aaron Judge's first time
Yeah,
playing at Cruz Field there,
it's
and
true.
they lost. Just
They did lost. John wanted to make that a note.
I wanted to make it that a point.
But the Yankees, right now they're walking through. They're just trying to stay healthy. Luis Heel should be back soon. Stanton should be back relatively soon. Jazz Chisholm is doing a minor league rehab stint. He'll be back soon. Fernando Cruz, like I said, will be back. The only one that's not coming back anytime soon is Garrett Cole. He's not coming back till next summer. So the Yankees right now need to stay afloat, win games, but stay healthy. And that's the most important thing. Keep the guys healthy. But John, I kind of want to move into your favorite segment. Some studs and duds. Because I know you always have an Oriole or a former Oriole lined up. Without
not every week.
This week, though, for me, I'm going with a former White Sox and Gavin Sheets. He's a Padre now. He's a first baseman for them. 7 games. He's had 8 hits, 29 at-bats, 5 home runs. He's hitting .276 with 11 RBIs. But the real thing that stands out, a 1.116 OPS. Now, on the flip side, my dud is the guy who I was going to think was the jewel of the trade deadline, the one stud pitcher that's really available. Turns out he's not a stud, and he's probably going to be available anyway. And that's Sandy Alcantara. 0-1 in his 2 games started this week. That's 9 1/3 inning pitched. A 10.61 ERA. 11 earned runs in 9.1 innings. 12 hits, 6 strikeouts, 6 walks. And he's got a .383 batting average against. He just hasn't really lived up to it after the pitch clock and injuries. He struggled. What about you? Who's your stud and dud?
Well, you kind of called me out earlier for Orioles, and I do have an Orioles player this week for my stud. It's Ryan O'Hearn from the Orioles. He's 16 for 28, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 3 walks, only 2 strikeouts, 1 stolen base, .571 average, .625 OBP, and .857 slugging. I mean, that's amazing.
Where was this last year?
I don't know. He's been around for a while. I think he's like 31, and all of a sudden he's just like he just like figured it out all of a sudden.
He got traded to the Royals, right?
Yeah, and then I think now he's back.
So he's with Baltimore.
Yeah,
he was drafted
Baltimore.
by the Royals, my mistake, and got traded from the Royals to Baltimore.
Yeah.
And he's kind of taken over that first base position. They made room for Vinny Pasquantino and got rid of him. And he's been a very, very solid player now. He's 31 years old, off to the best year of his career. He's already got 2.1 WAR, which is better than his best over a full season. That was 2 WAR last year. So he's already having, the best year of his career.
He's gonna be the Orioles savior. That's what he's gonna be. He's gonna be the Orioles savior.
Is that so?
Yeah, right now. That's why I'm saying lock it in, Orioles savior.
Lock it in.
Lock it
in. John says Orioles savior. And who is your dud?
That'll be probably one of my worst takes I have all this season. My dud this week is Athletics starting pitcher JP Sears. He started the season off pretty well with his first 8 outings, having a 2.8 ERA. But
not bad.
Lately, his last 3 starts, he's up to a 13. He had a 13.86 ERA, 2.27 WHIP through 12 1/3 innings, and he has a 5.18 ERA on the season right now. So,
former Yankee great.
Not great, not doing great.
But yeah, he's just one of those guys. I mean, the A's don't really have much of a foundation in the starting pitching side of things right now. Although they do have a couple great players, Jacob Wilson,
I almost was
Mason
gonna do
Brent
stuff
Rooker.
this week.
They just have some really great young guys. I really do like Brent Rooker a lot.
Rooker.
Jacob Wilson's right now going to be the rookie of the year, in my opinion. Tyler Soderstrom, he's also a very, very good player.
It's
This
like
is feeling like the
Nick
age of
Kurtz.
like Nick Kurtz. Yes,
Nick
another
Kurtz.
one.
Pennsylvania guy.
Yeah.
Lines
JJ
has him.
Bleday, Lawrence Butler's another one. I'm very, very
I mean, they
big
have
fan.
Zach Galoff. He's hurt now, though. I mean, they
He
have a
is.
lot of good young players.
Shea Langoliers, the other Max Muncy's on that team. They have good players. They just need to work on the pitching side of things. John, tell me about your moment of the week.
Moment of the week. Well, you know how I like my NL Central teams,
You do. We've both been high on the Reds.
the Reds, but we're going to be talking about a Cubs player,
Ooh, what Cup player is that?
Pete Crow Armstrong, who's
Some
having a
PCR action.
breakout season. Yeah, he's having a breakout season.
CA.
And funny enough, the Cubs were playing the Reds. They were down 4-6 in the seventh inning. Pete Crow Armstrong comes up with the bases loaded, hits a home run, his first grand slam of his career, and puts the Cubs up with 8-6 with the go-ahead grand slam there, and they end up winning 13-6.
I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong seems like a guy that has always been a Cub, right? He's never gotten traded from another
Yeah,
team.
it seems like a guy you
You would
wouldn't
always
want to
hold
get rid
on to
of.
this guy.
Yeah,
He'd be an untouchable. Not somebody you'd move for 2.5 months of Javier Baez to bring him to New York and play with the Mets, right? You would never trade Pete Crow
never.
Armstrong for that.
That's crazy.
That would be crazy. For me, my moment of the week's also a grand slam, but I couldn't believe Christian Yelich had never had a walk-off home run up until the other day.
That's hard to believe, honestly.
That's very hard to believe after the MVP seasons he's had, how great he's been, not just with the Brewers, but going back to his Marlins days. Side note, the Marlins had an outfield of Marcell Ozuna, Christian Yelich, and Giancarlo Stanton, and they didn't win anything.
That's crazy.
Isn't it?
That is crazy.
Right? But Yelich hit his first career walk-off home run, also was a grand slam in the bottom of the 10th in a 5-1 win over the Boston Red Sox. So they were 1-1, obviously tied going into that 10th inning. But it was pretty crazy for that. The first career walk-off, and then for it to be a grand slam.
I mean, walk-offs in general are just exciting, and when you have a walk-off home run, that's really, really exciting. And then to make it like a walk-off grand slam is just, I mean, there's almost nothing like it.
Nothing like
I mean, it's like what you dream of, like when you're a kid. You dream of coming
Yeah.
up, bases loaded.
I'm in the bottom of the 9th, bottom of the 10th. I'm here, bases loaded, World Series on the line.
Or just really any game on the line.
When you were a kid, imagining yourself playing in the World Series, who was the other team you were playing against?
You know what? I feel like it probably was the Yankees. Probably, I'm on the Phillies playing the Yankees. I had a lot of my cousins are Yankees fans, and
So
I
you
am
always
probably
competed the Yankees?
Oh, absolutely.
See, for me, it wasn't even the World Series that I would dream of as a kid, just because I felt like the Yankees should just win the World Series. It was every time I envisioned, as a kid, that big moment, it was always versus the Red Sox. Hitting that walk-off home run versus the Red Sox, beating the Red Sox.
That was the big rivalry back then. Huge.
That was
still is.
the biggest rivalry in baseball. Should still be. I'm actually going to Yankees Red Sox in a couple weeks. That should be pretty fun when the Sox come to town. But it's just one of those things where I always, that's the team you wanted to beat. Now, the Yankees obviously didn't win the World Series, and they do come and play in a World Series rematch, next week or this week, I should say, versus the Dodgers. That's one of the series that we're going to highlight because how could you not talk about Yankees Dodgers World Series rematch? Judge, Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Fried, Yamamoto, Rodon, Bellinger, his return to the Dodgers. He was a Dodger. Goldschmidt, who played against the Dodgers while he was with the Diamondbacks for all those years. Dominguez, now the young guy. Volpe. You have a bunch of really big name guys or guys that are coming up to be on that level, and they just played in the World Series versus each other. That's a big matchup. And then taking that even into further account, next week you have the Yankees and Dodgers this week. Next week you have Mets Dodgers and NLCS rematch. And at the same time, you have Guardians Yankees and ALCS rematch. So both of those happening at the same time next week. You're getting a bunch of really good big series that have some tension to it because the Guardians and Mets, both their seasons ended at the hands of that other team that they're playing against.
I feel like MLB has done a pretty good job this year with scheduling.
But every team plays every team, so you're going to get this. But now
they have them like all lined up there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now the series I want to highlight specifically would be Royals Cardinals. The Cardinals are surprising. They're playing much, much better than I really thought they were going to be. I'm still in on the Reds. That's the team I want. But the Cardinals, they're 32-24. They're 3 games back of the Cubs. Now the Reds, like I wanted, I thought they were going to win the division. They're 7.5 back. They're just a game under 500. I still believe Hunter Green for Cy Young and all that. But Kansas City, St. Louis, Kansas City, they got knocked out by the Yankees. They're not nearly playing as well as they should be. They're 7 games back of their division, but they're 30-27. That's 1 game back of the wild card. So that's still definitely a team that could make the playoffs in a surprisingly good AL Central, even though I still don't think I trust the Twins. But that's a series between 2 playoff teams, not the highest caliber, but definitely 2 good teams.
My weekly series highlight is, I guess, a little bit more lackluster. I just for some reason like this matchup. It's the Pirates versus the Padres. You have the Padres that are 2 games behind the Dodgers, and then the Pirates, I think, are 14 games behind first place there. So I guess you can probably, I feel a lot of people count them out, and they probably are out. I don't see them getting anywhere near close to anything. Maybe a crazy wild card spot, because who knows?
Probably not.
Maybe, but probably not. But I just feel like it's going to be a fun series to watch.
Trade schemes to the Yankees.
You wish.
I do wish. I really do. I really, really, really do.
I bet you they trade him to the Dodgers or.
I don't think they're going to trade him.
They're not going to trade him
at all. I think.
There's been some talk about the Pirates trading schemes.
Just give him the $500 million contract that he's going to get.
They should. If the Pirates want to win anything, they need to spend money.
Right.
They need to give schemes a contract. They need to give contracts out. They need to sign their players. You can't just keep letting them walk.
No. But that'll do it here for us. We'll be back next week. We'll talk a little buy or sell. I have a couple scenarios. I want to see if what these guys think. Is it for real, or are we still too early in the season to put much stake into it? But for John Pauline, Corey Jason, this has been the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast, signing off.